A young girl set out to deliver newspapers on a quiet afternoon in her village. She never came home. Her bicycle was found abandoned in the middle of the road, newspapers scattered across the ground, but there was no sign of her. Within hours, the search began. Hundreds of locals joined the effort, combing every lane, field, and wooded area alongside the police. Planes flew overhead, divers searched nearby ponds, and investigators knocked on doors, asking the same question over and over: where was she? Days passed. Then weeks. The countryside was scoured, but no trace of her was ever found. No footprints, no witnesses, no evidence of a struggle. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. As the investigation stretched on, questions turned into theories, theories into rumors. And then, decades later, a name surfaced, one that sent a shudder through those who remembered that August afternoon. A man who had walked free for years. A man whom investigators had long suspected but could never convict. If you're new here, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a case like this one. Let's begin. Genette Tate was 13 years old, bright, kind, and full of life. She was the only child of John and Sheila Tate, but her parents had separated when she was young. She lived with her father, stepmother Violet, and stepsister Tanya in the small village of Aylesbury, Devon. It was a quiet place, the kind of village where everyone knew one another. The rolling green fields stretched for miles, and narrow country lanes wound between farms and cottages. Nothing ever seemed out of place. At home, Genette was known for her cheerful personality. She had a warm smile, an easygoing nature, and a natural curiosity about the world. She was close to both her parents despite their separation, regularly visiting her mother while living with her father. Life in Aylesbury was simple. She spent time with friends, helped around the house, and, like most children her age, enjoyed her small freedoms. That summer, Genette had agreed to take on a temporary job. A friend who usually delivered newspapers in the village was going on holiday, and she volunteered to take over the route for a week. It wasn't unusual. Plenty of kids in small towns picked up odd jobs, and delivering newspapers was a way to earn a little extra money while riding her bicycle along familiar streets. It was 3:30 p.m. on August 19, 1978. Genette Tate rode her bicycle down Whithen Lane, a narrow country road flanked by tall hedges and open fields. Two of her school friends, walking along the same lane, saw her up ahead. She turned to chat with them briefly before pedaling forward. A few moments later, they continued along the road, expecting to catch up with her at the next stop. But when they reached the top of the hill, Genette was nowhere to be seen. Her bicycle lay on its side in the middle of the lane. Newspapers were scattered across the tarmac. The road was empty. There was no sign of a struggle, no sounds of distress, just the unsettling stillness of the countryside. They called her name. No answer. They checked the nearby fields, peered over hedgerows, and scanned the open land stretching toward the horizon. Nothing. When Genette still didn't return, they assumed she had gone home. They picked up her bicycle and made their way to her house, expecting to find her there. But when they arrived at Barton Farm Cottage, her father, John Tate, told them she hadn't come back. The initial confusion quickly turned into concern. John Tate and his wife Violet immediately set out to search the village, retracing her route, calling her name, knocking on doors. Neighbors joined in. Within the hour, a group of locals had gathered, scouring the lanes and surrounding countryside. At 5 p.m., after nearly 2 hours without a single trace of his daughter, John Tate called the police. Officers from Devon and Cornwall police arrived and began their own search. They questioned the two friends who had last seen her. They checked the immediate area, looking for any clue that might explain what had happened in those missing minutes. Early theories surfaced. Had she simply run away? It seemed unlikely. Her purse, containing the money she had collected from her paper route, was still strapped to the bike. The savings she had been putting aside for an upcoming family holiday remained untouched in her bedroom. There was nothing to suggest she had left voluntarily. As the hours passed with no sign of Genette, Devon and Cornwall police launched a full-scale investigation. The case was unlike anything the quiet countryside had seen before. Officers moved quickly, gathering statements and tracking every possible lead. Within a day, the missing persons case had escalated into one of the largest investigations in the region's history. Authorities established a command center and began coordinating search efforts. Over 70 officers were deployed to the area, supported by trained dogs, mounted police, and volunteer search teams. Nearby farms, abandoned buildings, and dense patches of woodland were examined in detail. Police divers scoured rivers and ponds, looking for any evidence that might explain what had happened to Genette. But the searches revealed nothing. No torn fabric, no signs of a struggle, no personal belongings, only the bicycle and scattered newspapers left in the lane where she was last seen. With no physical evidence to guide them, investigators turned to witness statements, hoping to uncover new details. Several locals reported seeing a young man near Whithen Lane around the time Genette vanished. Witnesses described him as being in his early 20s, clean-cut, and notably attractive. Some recalled seeing him near a maroon Triumph car, which had been parked along the road that afternoon. Though the sighting wasn't immediately linked to the case, police took note, believing the car and its driver could hold crucial answers. Determined to track down the lead, authorities released a composite sketch of the man, asking the public for help identifying him. The image was printed in local newspapers and broadcast on television, sparking a wave of speculation. Who was he? Why had he been in the area? Did he know Genette, or was it just coincidence? The questions mounted, but no one came forward with information that led to his identity. As the days stretched on, detectives explored multiple theories. Some suggested she had run away, though there was nothing in her home life to indicate she would do so. Others believed she may have been involved in an accident and hidden away, but without any physical evidence, this theory quickly lost traction. The possibility of an abduction gained traction, but without a suspect or a clear motive, it remained just that, a possibility. The investigation grew more complex as police expanded their efforts. They logged over 20,000 index cards of information, documenting every sighting, every tip, every potential lead. Detectives retraced Genette's route, speaking to residents along her paper round, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual beyond the reported sighting of the Triumph. The weight of the case soon became apparent. The search, the witness statements, the investigative efforts, it all led to dead ends. With no ransom note, no communication from an abductor, and no evidence suggesting an accident, the case took on an eerie uncertainty. The investigation pressed on, but progress was painfully slow. Each passing day without answers deepened the uncertainty. The hope of finding Genette alive was slipping away, and for the people of Aylesbury, a grim reality was taking hold. A 13-year-old girl had vanished in broad daylight, leaving behind nothing but questions. As the years went by, Robert Black's name began to surface more frequently in connection with Genette Tate's disappearance. His history of abductions, which spanned from the 1970s into the 1980s, cast a long shadow over the case. Black, a delivery driver who traveled extensively throughout the UK, became a prime suspect due to his eerie ability to blend in among everyday people while hiding a dark, violent secret. While no concrete evidence ever directly linked Black to the Tate case, several factors made him a prime focus for investigators. Black's notoriety as a serial killer who preyed on young girls in isolated areas became known in the years following his conviction. His crimes followed a chillingly similar pattern. He would abduct his victims, often after offering them a ride, then take them to secluded places where he would assault and kill them. This method mirrored the circumstances surrounding Genette's disappearance, her being alone on a quiet road with no one around when she vanished. Several key details fueled the suspicion that Robert Black might have been responsible for Genette's abduction. One of the most unsettling pieces of information came from eyewitnesses who reported seeing a vehicle resembling Black's van near the area of Genette's last known sighting. This van had been described in earlier investigations linked to other abductions Black had committed, and its presence near Exeter on the day of Genette's disappearance was impossible to ignore. Additionally, Black's past was filled with incidents where his victims were young girls who resembled Genette in both age and appearance. These troubling similarities made it almost too easy to draw connections between him and the 13-year-old girl from Aylesbury, even though investigators had nothing more than circumstantial evidence to work with. No eyewitness had ever positively identified him as being in the immediate area, and no DNA or other forensic evidence was recovered from the scene of Genette's disappearance. Despite this, investigators couldn't overlook the striking commonalities between the crime scenes and Black's criminal profile. His history of committing similar crimes in rural areas led many to wonder if Genette had become just another victim of his. However, without a solid lead or direct evidence, police were left with little more than suspicions and a growing sense of frustration. Over the years, as new forensic methods evolved, investigators hoped that advancements in technology might finally offer the breakthrough they needed to tie Black to Genette's case. Yet, even with modern DNA testing and other investigative techniques, the evidence remained scant. Black had never left behind physical traces that could be definitively linked to Genette's abduction, and the passage of time had only served to blur the details surrounding the case. Then, in 2016, the possibility of ever gaining clarity on Robert Black's involvement in the Tate case vanished with his death. For years, investigators had struggled with the uncertainty of his guilt. Black's death not only closed the chapter on his life but also ended any hopes of obtaining answers from him. No confession, no opportunity for interrogation, and no further examination of his past crimes could ever provide closure to the case. The enduring question remained: could Robert Black have been responsible for Genette Tate's disappearance? Despite the compelling circumstantial evidence and the chilling similarities to his other known crimes, the lack of concrete proof meant that the truth may never be fully known. The haunting possibility that Black could have been the man who abducted Genette still lingers, but the resolution that so many hoped for never came to pass. As the years passed, the sense of frustration grew among those who had followed the case. Even though many believed that Black was the most likely suspect, the absence of evidence left a painful void. The unresolved nature of the case, coupled with the knowledge that the killer might have been hiding in plain sight all along, left everyone involved in the investigation grappling with one unanswered question after another. In the end, the idea that Robert Black could have taken Genette Tate is a theory that, while plausible, will likely never be proven. His death ensured that no definitive answers would emerge, leaving the Tate family, law enforcement, and the public to wonder, could it have been him? For more than 4 decades, the Tate family endured the agony of uncertainty, their lives shaped by the unbearable mystery of what happened to Genette. The unanswered questions haunted them relentlessly, and their lives became an endless search for closure that would never come. John Tate, Genette's father, was at the center of this heart-wrenching journey. A man known for his quiet demeanor, he became a public figure in his quest for justice, but his pain was always private. John's pleas were simple yet profound. He just wanted to bring his daughter home. He would often say, "I just want to give my daughter a proper burial." This simple, heartfelt wish encapsulated the torment he lived with every day. He wanted to know where Genette was, and if she could not be returned alive, he longed to offer her a dignified resting place. That was all he asked for, no more, no less. The absence of closure left a permanent void, one that affected not only him but the entire Tate family. It was a pain that would never subside. Throughout the years, John made numerous public appeals for information. He was not just the father of a missing child, he was a man consumed by the search for the truth. He would speak to the media, sharing his heartache and his hope that someone, somewhere, might hold the key to solving the case. Each new lead, each passing year without resolution, chipped away at his spirit. His daughter's fate was a question that gnawed at him every waking hour. Yet, despite his tireless efforts, there was no breakthrough, no answers. The silence from the authorities and the community felt deafening. John's anguish was shared by the wider community in Aylesbury. The disappearance of a young girl from their quiet village was unfathomable. A place where neighbors knew each other by name, where children played outside without fear, was forever changed by the absence of Genette. Her vanishing left a hole in the fabric of the community. Every year that passed without answers added to the growing sorrow of the town. People still remembered the once vibrant young girl with the bright smile, the girl who had disappeared without a trace, leaving a question mark that would linger for generations. The emotional toll on those who loved Genette was impossible to measure. Her stepmother, family members, and friends all lived with the unbearable weight of wondering what had happened to her. They clung to the hope that someday, somehow, they would receive the answers they had longed for. But as the years turned into decades, that hope began to feel like an illusion. Genette's case, despite being one of the most high-profile missing persons cases in the UK, became a symbol of unresolved pain, a ghost that haunted not only her family but the wider public as well. The police, too, were affected by the case. Over the years, as new technologies and investigative methods emerged, they continued to revisit Genette's disappearance. But every time they thought they had uncovered something, the leads would fizzle out. The investigation became emblematic of the difficulty of solving cold cases, especially when crucial pieces of evidence, like a body or direct witness testimony, were missing. Despite the tireless efforts of detectives and officers involved in the case, the lack of closure was a constant reminder of how fragile the justice system could be. In 2020, John Tate passed away without ever learning the fate of his daughter. His death marked the end of an era for the family, but it also underscored the tragedy of an unresolved case that spanned a lifetime. John had carried the burden of that mystery for so long, and with his passing, it seemed that the final chapter of his personal suffering had been written. Yet, the story of Genette Tate remains incomplete, a lingering question that still echoes through the streets of Aylesbury and beyond. John's passing was also a stark reminder of the toll that cases like Genette's take on those left behind. It wasn't just the victim who suffered, the entire family, the community, and even law enforcement carried the burden of not knowing. As time went on, the case became a symbol of the emotional cost of missing children cases, and the mental and emotional toll it takes on those who search for the truth, often without finding it. For her family, the questions still persist. What happened to their daughter? Where is she? Will they ever have the answers they so desperately need? For the community of Aylesbury, the pain of not knowing will never fade, and the memory of a young girl who vanished without a trace will endure, leaving an indelible mark on the town and its people. Genette Tate's disappearance has left an indelible mark not only on her family but also on the community of Aylesbury and the broader landscape of missing persons investigations in the UK. Her case served as a catalyst for significant changes in how missing children cases are handled and perceived. The enduring mystery of Genette's disappearance prompted introspection within law enforcement regarding the capabilities and limitations of investigative tools at the time. Despite advances in forensic science and technology, crucial breakthroughs eluded investigators. The case highlighted the complexities of gathering and interpreting evidence in a rural setting and emphasized the importance of community engagement in sustaining long-term missing persons investigations. Over the decades, Genette's case has remained a focal point for awareness campaigns, advocacy groups, and law enforcement training initiatives aimed at improving responses to missing children cases. Her story serves as a poignant reminder of the impact of unresolved disappearances on families, communities, and the professionals dedicated to finding answers. The legacy of Genette Tate endures through ongoing efforts to keep her memory alive and to seek justice for her. While her fate remains unknown, the commitment to finding answers has not waned. Her name continues to evoke emotions ranging from sorrow to hope, fueling renewed efforts to uncover the truth and to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Thank you for watching. If you have any information about Genette Tate's disappearance, please reach out to Devon and Cornwall Police. Your tip could hold the key to uncovering the truth. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth stories. Let's keep these memories alive and continue the search for answers.